All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Dylan Luss with the National Weather Service here in Peachtree City, Atlanta. We apologize that we've had some issues with the GoTo software, it looks like, that are out of our control, but here we are. So here's a special weather briefing. This will be valid for today at 4 p.m. That's Sunday on the 19th. And let's go ahead and dive into it. So, a couple main points and headlines to start with. Right now, we've got some very isolated snow flurries that have been affecting primarily North Georgia, all the way down into portions of the metro. That's going to continue through this evening. We really do not expect any accumulations to occur with this. If you do see any accumulations, they would be very, very light and would not bring any impacts or anything like that. The one exception to that may be some of those like higher peaks in the North Georgia mountains where they're getting a little bit better potential for like some snowfall as there's been some wraparound, uh, basically moisture with the system that's starting to move out of the area that brought us rain yesterday. So the next big thing to talk about is with that system moving out, we've got very cold air that is starting to come into the area tonight and is going to continue into the day on Monday. With that in mind, we've issued an extreme cold warning for parts of North Georgia extending all the way into the metro. That'll be in effect from 1 a.m. to noon on Monday. Everywhere outside of that extreme cold warning still has a cold weather advisory. We'll talk a little bit more about that next in terms of the temperatures and stuff, but no, these are going to be some very cold temperatures that will be impactful tomorrow morning, especially. Beyond that, we will continue to see cold air hang around. We'll have well below normal temperatures, upwards of 20 degrees below normal, basically through almost the rest of the week. After that, which the big thing a lot of you are here for is obviously going to be the winter weather that we're expecting to impact the state Tuesday into Wednesday morning. We do have a winter storm watch that is in effect now from 10 a.m. Tuesday until 7 a.m. Wednesday. And it's generally along and south of I-85, and that includes much of metro Atlanta. And we'll show you that here in a bit. So here's kind of the weather setup for you real quick for those who care. This is going to be Monday's weather map on the left, and that's going to show this basically huge dome of high pressure. That's our Arctic air mass. There's very cold Arctic air under that, and you can see it's filtering well into the south. And if you look down on the like bottom right of this map, there's even a cold front that is cleared all the way through Florida. This is a very, very strong cold air mass that's settling in place. That air mass is going to bring us the very, very basically almost dangerously cold conditions that are going to be in place tomorrow morning. And a lot of places tomorrow likely will not get above freezing, especially in North Georgia down into the metro. Places that do get above freezing will only do so for maybe a couple of hours before the sun goes back down and that cold air, cools down again. Beyond that, Tuesday morning, we begin to see a storm system that's going to develop in the Gulf, right kind of along the edge of this cold air mass. And that's going to be our weather system on Tuesday that's going to bring the potential for some snowfall across north and central Georgia. So, uh, once again, really want to emphasize with this cold air. Here's our low temperatures on Monday morning on the left. It's going to be very cold. We've got temperatures, it's going to be in the teens in North Georgia all the way through the metro and even approaching areas of central Georgia. It's going to be in the single digits in some places in the mountains, potentially even colder. And it's going to be in the 20s all the way down through like Columbus, Macon, and points southward. On top of this, we're going to have some decent winds and wind gusts that are still going to be blowing during the morning hours because of this cold front that's coming through the area. That's going to give us some really extreme wind chills. So you can see on the right here, this is our kind of estimated wind chills across the area on Monday morning. We've got temperatures in the mountains that are going to be sub-zero for those feels like wind chill temperatures on Monday morning. Areas in northwest Georgia will be right at zero all the way down into portions of metro Atlanta. We know there's a lot of potential events that are going on. There's various MLK Day events. Obviously in Atlanta itself, we have the College Football National Championship as well. So we want folks to definitely be aware that if you're going to be out and about and you're going to be outdoors for any extended period of time, especially on Monday morning, it's going to be bitterly cold out there and you need to be prepared. You need to be dressed appropriately. And You need to potentially have a way to just get inside for a little bit and maybe warm up. All right. So here's where basically that outline of that extreme cold warning is in the dark blue versus where we now have a cold weather advisory in the kind of lighter shade of blue there. Again, we have very high confidence that we're going to see wind chill values that are going to be at or below 0 degrees Fahrenheit within that extreme cold warning, and that does extend into a good bit of metro Atlanta. It's in effect from 1 a.m. through 12 p.m. on Monday. That cold weather advisory that you see that extends out outside of metro Atlanta and a little bit of to the east, it's still going to be very cold. We're going to have wind chills in these areas that could be from 15 degrees all the way down into the single digits on Monday morning. So with this in mind, please make sure you're protecting those 4 Ps. If you have pets that aren't used to this type of weather and they're normally outdoors, especially overnight, get them inside if you can. If you can't get them inside, get them some kind of shelter, at least to be protected from the wind. Pipes, obviously, we get really concerned this time of year. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but pipes are definitely potentially going to be vulnerable to bursting, especially if they're exposed. Obviously, our vulnerable populations are homeless. Folks like that definitely will recommend, if you're able to have those shelters and things like that. For the elderly and other folks who may be a little bit more vulnerable to the cold, definitely check in on them, make sure the heat's still running, things like that. And then plants, if you have plants that are sensitive to this type of stuff, this will absolutely be a damaging freeze for them. So get them indoors or protect them however you can. As we go into Monday, here's our high temperature. Like I mentioned earlier, it looks like a lot of areas may not get above freezing. That includes the city of Atlanta on Monday. It's going to stay pretty bitterly cold out there. And even in those areas that do get above freezing, like over towards Athens or down into Macon and Columbus, you may only be above freezing for a couple of hours before these low temperatures that you see on tomorrow night come screaming right back in as the sun goes down. And so it's going to be bitterly cold once again. The good news is about tomorrow night is that the wind should not be as strong. We'll have to see, we may still need cold weather advisories in some areas, but we aren't, at least at this time, expecting that we would need to reissue those extreme cold warnings. Obviously that is subject to what we see with the latest data and things like that. As we go into Tuesday, this is when the snowfall event may potentially occur. So our highs, once again, in some areas they do get above freezing. In some areas you are still below freezing. One thing we really want to point out with these high temps is these temperatures may occur before the precip starts, during like the late morning into early afternoon hours. But once precipitation starts to fall, we get what's called a wet bulb effect. That's just a fancy meteorology term saying that when precipitation starts to fall into very dry air, the temperature tends to decrease. And that's what we expect to happen here. It should get us back down below freezing in a lot of areas that will make, right now it looks like snow will be our primary concern across both North and Central Georgia, but we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Tuesday night, once again, it's going to get chilly out there yet again, and we get one more night of bitter cold temperatures. Going into Wednesday, these temperatures, if we do have winter precipitation sitting on the ground, it is possible that these temperatures may have to be lowered a little bit, just because that winter precipitation may create kind of an insulating effect. That causes the temps to end up being a little bit lower than what may be forecast. And then once again, Wednesday night, yet another night of very cold air. After this, it does look like it will start to slowly warm up. And by slowly warm up, I mean, instead of being in the 30s, it may be in like the 40s and things like that. So this may bring us, at least bring some areas back out of those like sub-freezing temps and things like that. But this map shows you the number of hours that your temps could be at or below 32 degrees over the course of Sunday evening through Thursday morning. Want to make sure we emphasize this is not necessarily consecutive hours. This is just the number of hours in that time period that you would be below freezing. You can see in parts of North Georgia and even into the Atlanta, that is greater than 80 hours during those couple of days that you're below freezing. Past events have kind of taught us that we tend to begin seeing problems, especially with like pipes bursting and stuff like that, once we get about 48 hours below freezing, either consecutively or in a very short time frame like this. And since almost all of Georgia could exceed this threshold, we do anticipate there's going to be some issues. And once again, with this in mind, this is another case where we say make sure you protect those 4Ps: your pets that are vulnerable, your pipes, those vulnerable populations, and those plants. All right, so let's talk about the winter weather. So we do have a winter storm watch that is in effect from 10 a.m. Tuesday through 7 a.m. Wednesday. As you can see here on the map, this is roughly along and south of a line from Carroll to Hall County, or you could basically say kind of along and south of the I-85 corridor, a little bit north of it, obviously. This does include the Atlanta metro area, it does include Columbus, it does include Macon, and it does include Athens. Right now, our expectation is that we'll see periods of snow that will become moderate to heavy at times, with total accumulations that would be around 1 to 3 inches. There also could be down in far central Georgia, so we're talking about like down towards maybe Americus, Abbeville, some places like that. We could see some light sleet that mixes in with this at times, and it is possible we could see a brief transition to freezing rain in these areas. Generally, we're more concerned about the snowfall in those areas than we are about any kind of ice accumulation. And our total ice accumulations down there are well under 1/10 of an inch, which is generally below any threshold where we would see any problems with like trees or anything like that. So with all of this in mind, given how cold it is going to be, you need to plan on there being slippery, hazardous road conditions. There will likely be impacts to the Tuesday evening and Wednesday, to the Tuesday evening commute. And because of how cold it is, because of how quickly this should be able to almost immediately start sticking to, say, roadways and sidewalks and all those sorts of things, and given that it may get down into, say, the 20s on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, we likely will see continued impacts Wednesday morning and even possibly into the evening, given it's not supposed to get much above freezing on Wednesday. All right, so here are the snow probabilities that we've kind of shown you the previous days, updated with the latest information of seeing greater than 1 inch of snow and greater than 2 inches of snow. What we want to kind of emphasize with this for you is this is technically, especially if you're comparing this to what you saw yesterday, this is a decrease in the probabilities of seeing 1 inch or 2 inches of snow in a lot of areas. We are seeing a trend in the models with the latest runs towards slightly lower amounts. That being said, that can still change, especially as this is the type of storm system that is very sensitive to small changes, basically small changes in the atmosphere, which means we can continue to kind of see these model shifts. What we want to emphasize is that, even if it is quote unquote only 1 inch of snow, because of how cold it is, there are going to be impacts. While GDOT is out there doing amazing work getting the roads treated, and a lot of our counties will be out there also treating roads and helping to clear roads, those tertiary roads and things like that, there's still going to be impacts for people who are trying to drive. So we really want to emphasize that with this storm system, that even if we quote unquote only get like 1 inch of snow in some places, even up to the Atlanta metro, there will be impacts. Our probability of 2 inches of snow, that is technically like our amount threshold for a winter storm warning. However, with a winter storm warning, we can also issue that warning simply for impacts. And that may end up being the case for this storm, where we kind of lower our thresholds because this is an unusually cold event for us that will change how the potential impacts of these accumulations will end up presenting themselves compared to like a more traditional snowfall. So speaking of those impacts, this is from the WPC, their WSSI. This is in line with what we've kind of been showing you guys all along here with these briefings. Once again, you'll see a trend here where there's like a slight decrease in the overall percentages with these various impacts, and that is just a byproduct of the potential snowfall amounts coming down, and there are still models that are coming in with almost no snowfall in the area. So that's going to also kind of trend these percentages down a little bit. We still want to emphasize, though, that a 50, 60, 70% chance of seeing some kind of impacts, especially where that is painted across central Georgia, is very, very high. So you need to be prepared for some kind of impacts to travel, especially with these cold temperatures, and especially with the cold temperatures that have been around for several days. This stuff is going to stick if it does fall. Here's basically the moderate impacts and the major impacts of that same WSSI. Again, those percentages have come down a little, and that is a byproduct of the slightly lowered amounts, but these are still decent percentages. You've got 30 to 40% chances across central Georgia. Again, a strip that is being highlighted there from like Columbus to Macon, and that definitely an area of the country, as many of you are aware, that are not used to seeing, the potential of decent snowfall and the potential of decent snowfall that will stick. So we need to keep in mind that there could be, or at least I should say there will be impacts, again, if this snowfall does stick. Finally, I'll finally show you here our current forecast snow totals. Right now, we've got that kind of band between Columbus and Macon painted down into central Georgia as an area for getting the most snowfall. That's in line with our expectations right now of about 1 to 2 inches. I'll show you our high-end amounts and low-end amounts next, and you'll see that there's definitely boom bust potential still here. But our expectation with this storm right now is going to be what you kind of see here. As we get up north into the Atlanta metro, right now in Atlanta, we've got anywhere from around an inch to a little bit less than an inch. And then as you get further north, the further north you go in the state, the less confidence and the less certainty we have in seeing snowfall actually being able to form in those areas. So there is definitely still uncertainty on what the northward extent of this storm will be. So with that in mind, here is our reasonable worst case. So those high-end amounts on the left, and then our best case, the low-end amounts on the right. And again, unfortunately, even this close to the event, we still are seeing some boom bust potential with this. There are still a not insignificant amount of models that are showing a potential bust with this, where we get hardly anything in terms of snowfall that comes out of this. And basically what happens is the low pressure system either isn't able to completely form, or it actually ends up forming so far south that it basically isn't any precipitation that ends up moving up into the area. Most of it would stay further south into like Florida and those areas. So that's one thing to keep in mind here, is it's very possible still that we end up not getting any snowfall. But we are trending away from that scenario still. We do think there is going to be some snow just based on our past experiences with these types of systems. And so we do also need to keep in mind the potential high-end amount here, which is a case where the system ends up a little bit stronger than what the current expectation is, and that could give us a pretty hefty strip of snow that falls somewhere probably between Atlanta down to, like, say, Abbeville, Vidalia, somewhere in there. So folks in Columbus and Macon, keep that in mind. You could certainly end up a little bit on the higher end, and same thing for like especially the south side of the Atlanta metro and even the metro itself. There is potential for a little bit higher amounts here. Here is the precip timing, just giving you an initial snapshot. Again, this is, as we always say when we show these models, this is only one run of one model. This is just giving you an idea of kind of how the model is showing the snowfall across the state on Tuesday specifically. We think that snow could begin in western Georgia as early as, say, 10 a.m. to noon, and it would be kind of a lighter band of snowfall that could start to form. By 4 p.m., you can see in this model there would be snow potentially falling in Atlanta, with the potential for some heavier snow further to the south, starting in, say, areas like Columbus. And then by 7 p.m., still could see some light snow falling across Atlanta, but the heaviest snow now has shifted to the south and is concentrated more over, say, Columbus to Macon, and then areas kind of a little bit north and a little bit south of those folks. So this is definitely indicative of a trend that we've seen in the models to kind of shift things a little bit further to the south. Just wanted to kind of show you this just as like a general timing, etc. All right, so that's all we really have in terms of this event for updates. We will see some, again, just to go through it, some isolated snow flurries are ongoing today across North Georgia. We're not expecting impacts. We're not expecting accumulations outside of the highest peaks of North Georgia. We are going to see this very cold air. It's already filtering into the area, and it's really going to push in tonight. It's going to be very cold, potentially dangerously cold across parts of North Georgia tomorrow morning, and really across all of North and Central Georgia. So please keep that in mind if you're going to be outside. And then we're expecting that winter weather now. It should impact the state Tuesday into Wednesday morning. We do have a winter storm watch in effect now from 10 a.m. until 7 a.m. Wednesday. We will likely make calls on upgrading that to either a winter storm warning or a winter storm advisory either tonight or at some point tomorrow afternoon with that. So for those who are asking about the timing of that, that is when we expect to make that decision. As you can imagine, given the boom bust potential of this, we're definitely watching things a little closely, and we may wait a little longer than we would traditionally to make a final call on exactly where we want to put the warnings and the advisories out for. That's all I have. So we will have additional briefings. We are planning an additional briefing for tomorrow. Whether or not it is live is obviously going to be dependent on whether or not GoToWebinar starts working again for us. So, we'll try to keep you guys updated as best we can in terms of email and stuff like that. But that's all we have. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, as always, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We're here for you. So thanks so much. Have a great day, everyone.